Hey everyone, this is Bob McIntosh from Mass Higher Lowell Career Center. I'm here with Maureen McCann, and she is going to talk about the not so sexy part of the job search that makes a difference. Now, we were wondering, how we were going to go about this webinar in terms of the questions I'm going to ask Maureen. And I think we got a good amount of questions and some really valid questions that I'm going to ask her. Would you first look over to your right where you can ask questions, you can raise your hand, and there is a PDF you can download. And would you raise your hand if you can hear and see me? Excellent, thank you. Good, Kathleen. Who else we got? Lauren, Laverne, Michael. Wow, we got a lot of people. Many people. Teresa, Thomas. Hey, it's good to see you, Tom. Excellent. Now, I encourage you to ask questions, Annette, Arthur, Beth. I encourage you to ask questions as we go along, but would you please keep them brief? Because if your question is really long, then I have a hard time reading them. And besides, my eyesight isn't very good anyways. So in any case, let's go forward. And we do have a question or a statement. Okay, someone says I can only hear you. All right. What I suggest, if any of you have mechanical difficulty, is I suggest that you exit this webinar and then re-enter. That should take care of the problem. Okay, so this is Maureen, and I'm not going to read through all of her credentials because she has many credentials. Maureen is an executive coach, and she resides in Canada. I met Maureen on LinkedIn, and Maureen, can you guess when we met? I ask this question all the time.
Definitely prior to 2019, but I cannot say with certainty. Do you know the answer?
Yes, I do, because I looked it up. January 11th, 2019. So, within that time, Maureen, I've grown to really respect you for your integrity, your honesty. And folks, Maureen is going to be very honest today. She's going to talk, she's going to tell it how it is. So, if please don't be offended by this. I told her, I said, Maureen, be honest. The people out there really appreciate honesty. They don't want, smoke blowing up their, you know what I mean. So in any case, Maureen, could you just tell us briefly where you are and why you came to that place?
Where I am physically? Oh, right. Yes. So I'm in Renfrew, Ontario, Canada, which is about an hour's drive or about 40 miles from Ottawa, the nation's capital, where on the weekend there was more or less a tornado, and much of my city lost its power. So I'm in the house where I grew up, currently standing in front of a window having this conversation with you folks.
All right. So in addition to all of that you've read so far, I did want to share one other fact about Maureen, and that is she is a world-class triathlete.
So untrue. But yeah, I love that you like to start with a joke, because that's just absolutely not true. But that is me on the coast of Oregon, on a 30K. Yeah, beautiful part of the world for sure.
All right. Hey, everyone, raise your hand if you run or even if you walk. I walk every day. Anyone? All right, Beth, Cliff, Cynthia, good. Daphne, good to see you. Donald, Elizabeth, oh wow, a lot of people raised their hand. That's very encouraging. So, someone says a bicycle. Okay, Ann, all right, excellent. That's good exercise too. So I'm gonna start with a poll, and the question is simply, how has your job search been for you? And now Maureen can't see the poll. Can you, Maureen?
No, but you've been doing a great job of reading responses so far. Okay, so right. Please continue.
So I'm launching the poll. All right, from all these people, we've gotten a really good response so far. So I'm going to give you 10 more seconds, folks. Okay, excellent, good. We're close to 90%, that's very good. Let me share with you the results. So Maureen, can you see the results there?
I can see that, yeah. It's unfortunate. There's a big response of not so sexy.
Right. I am encouraged to see that people say they're sexy as hell, 16% of you, that's great. So,
Yeah.
okay. But I'm sure, you can learn something from this webinar, no matter how you're feeling. And especially for those of you who are not feeling so sexy, this definitely is the webinar for you. So let's go forward. Okay, first question. Why this title, Maureen?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, to get people to attend, because I think it's an important skill that people should be developing throughout their career. But if you haven't to this point had a chance to develop it, but also because I think a lot of what happens in job search is you have to present your most confident self. And sometimes when you're not feeling it, you're not feeling so confident, what you need is a little bit of help and a little bit of support. And so we're going to talk about the not so sexy side of job search, which, almost everyone will come to job search with, I need a resume. If I just have a resume, that'll help me, go from one job to the next. And there's some other things that we need to address before we get to that piece. And again, it's not so sexy. So let's spend some time talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when I was describing this webinar, a month ago, I was talking about how it is really a nitty-gritty process, and it's not easy at times. In some cases, it can be very, very hard. So, this is what it's about. This is how, as Maureen says, is presenting your best self and really understanding more about how to conduct your job search. Okay, so how can the job search be less frustrating, exhausting, and overwhelming?
Yeah, I think if I could answer this easily for everyone, I would be much richer. And so what I'll say is, look, it's going to be different for every single person, right? Like you and I right now, we're going to give some very generic advice because we have a large audience. But when you sit one-on-one with someone, you're able to find out a little bit more about what's going on with them and then give them a solution. So it's a lot like going to the doctor. A GP will give you some information, but if what you need is a specialist or a surgeon, then you sort of work your way up to get that very specialized or customized service. And so because people arrive in job search with different levels of understanding or knowledge, like some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, it's not going to apply to every single person. And for others, it's going to be like, oh, that is exactly what I needed to hear. And so I often remind people, like, think of this like a buffet. So you don't have to eat all of the stuff that's in front of you, but there'll be something here for you, and please take advantage of it if it does seem to fit the bill for you. So to the question around, like, how can we make it less frustrating or exhausting? I think we first have to acknowledge the fact that we don't have these job search skills ready at the helm. Like, we go to work and then we do our job, and maybe we're there a year, maybe we're there 30 years, and then we have to use this skill set again, but we sort of put it in the back of our head and we don't really think about it as much. So it's not constantly, well, maybe it is for you and I, Bob, but for most of us, it's not the very first thing that we're thinking about on the daily. We're not thinking about, how do I update my resume, my LinkedIn profile? How do I make sure I'm ready should something, should my job be no longer? How do I prepare for that in advance? Most of us are reactive to that job loss or to a career change. And so I think that's probably part of the beginning of that job search cycle of being ready, poised, and mentally ready as well. Not just all of the resume, the LinkedIn, all of those things are important. They're the mechanics of it. But like, where's your head at? What are some of the things that you need to focus on in order to sort of clear the path or clear the way towards an effective job search?
Now, let me ask you a follow-up question to this. And if there are people who can't afford to hire a coach, a job coach, or even a resume writer, then who can they look to for help?
Oh my gosh, there's so many people. Yeah. So I can't speak to, what's going on for you in that location, but I know here, I am often recommending people to government sites, government organizations. So I think you guys have state funded and federally funded programs, but also like your alumni. Like if you went to college or university, you can go back and consider whether or not there might be some options there. Here in Canada, we have local employment centers as well. So something like where you are, Bob, where people are able to get help. But
that would be us. Yeah.
barring all of those programs, I mean, talk to a friend, talk to a neighbor. Is someone else going through it? Like, there are people in your circles. Maybe you know someone who used to work in human resources. Maybe you know somebody, or maybe you can reach out to someone on LinkedIn and see if you can't get some of those resources. Bob and I were just saying before we connected on this meeting, there's so much free content out there. Find someone whose content you respect and you align with and follow their program. Like, people are putting out so much good free content these days. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I would say that the content that people are putting out there, it's based on some experience they've had in their job search, or it's just how they've learned about the job search process through helping others find jobs and reading a lot of content. One of my favorite authors is Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote The Tipping Point. And you'd wonder, how would Malcolm Gladwell, relate to the job search? But he does. I mean, Daniel Pink, To Sell Yourself, to Sell is Human, is a great book. Folks, you should write this down. Daniel Pink, To Sell is Human. These are ways that you can educate yourself on the job search. So I do want to ask a question of the people in the audience. How many of you out there haven't had to look for work in, say, 15 years? Raise your hand, please. Okay, see some hands in that. Good. Candace, wow. Okay, so a lot of hands are going up. Yep. And also, Maureen and I were talking about this, and we were talking about how this is the case for some people, and how they look for work 10, 15, 20 years ago is a lot different than how they're looking for, you're looking for work now. So, yeah. Okay, excellent. Let's see. Okay, so next one. Why is the job search more difficult after 50?
So many different reasons. I'm sure people that are watching are like, oh, I could tell you a few reasons. I think the first one that comes to mind is ageism. I'm too old, or I feel like I'll be discriminated against. I want to hold off on that one for just a minute, because I think the follow-up question, we're going to start talking about that. But with that in mind, like I said earlier, it's almost like this muscle that's atrophied. When you go and you find your first job, whether it's as a teenager or whether it's, out of high school or after, college or university, you sort of anticipate you're going to be there for a while. And so this muscle, this job search muscle, starts to atrophy. You don't strengthen it at all, because you get comfortable in your job. And why wouldn't you? That's perfectly normal to anticipate that you would be someplace for an extended period of time. So what then happens is you get to the point where you're 50 and your standards have changed, right? So there's jobs that you're no longer willing to accept, or at least at first. Maybe as time progresses, then you become a little bit more open to it. But the idea, again, there is that because your standards have changed, but your job search skills haven't improved, you have like this unbalanced approach as to or expectation as to what's going to happen in job search. And so what we really like to do is sort of evaluate how to rebalance that, so you have a good understanding of what job search entails in 2022, and you pair that with what's going on in the market and what it's like to be a 50-year-old looking for work at this time.
Now, someone writes that, this is more of a statement than a question, but if you want to address this, age is a major factor, but now so is vaccine mandate. In Canada, how's it going there in terms of vaccination and it being a requirement for employment?
Yeah, well, I did a resume recently for someone at a very senior level in the government of Canada, and the criteria right off the bat was you must be fully vaccinated in order to qualify for this pool. Yeah. And so we address it. We address it up front and right at the beginning. And I'll tell you what I've told anyone is, when you're looking for work, you want to align with organizations who share the same values as you do. So whether it's vaccine status, ageism, whatever it happens to be, you're looking for an organization who believes what you believe. Right. So if there's an organization where your beliefs don't align, it's time for you to move on. I mean, it's easy to get frustrated and, even upset,
Right.
but it is your best course of action is, okay, that one's not for me. It's just like a buffet. That one's not for me. I think I'm going to move on to something else. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just saying it's the most effective use of your time is to move away from organizations that don't match the values that you share.
So how do you find out the values that employers, will provide employees, that they share the same values? How do you find that out?
Yeah, lots of different ways. I mean, the one that I most often point to is talk to people inside the organization.
Right.
Do your research, go to their website, go to their annual report, go to their LinkedIn profile, follow the CEO, talk to people inside the organizations, find out, is it really the organization that they portray online, or is there a bit of a mismatch going on there? And I'm not suggesting for a moment you'll ever get a clear-cut picture. If they want to do a snow job and tell you like, hey, we're one of the top 100 employers in this area,
right,
and they're not,
yeah,
you're going to, and this is why I'm saying it's so important to do this labor market research to really understand whether or not the company is for you. And so I personally think it's one of the most important pieces that we, again, the not so sexy piece that we skip right over because there's a big company name, or we really know these people, or we know they pay well. But when it comes right down to it, if the organization, their values and yours are not aligned, it's only a matter of time before either you decide or they decide it's not a fit anymore.
For example, a company like Google, everyone and their sister wants to work for Google, but do they really know what it's like, in Google? Do they know what the company culture is? Other big name companies as well. I've found that a lot of my customers really want to work at these big name blue chip companies, but do they know why? So I think that is, that's a great point you make. But there are some people that aren't on LinkedIn or don't know how to use LinkedIn's company feature to identify others. Can you think of another online source that could be helpful?
I'm gonna use a real example. I tweeted out something many years ago, and then I did it again recently. So I repurposed the content. I basically and it was basically talk to people inside the companies before you sign the offer.
Right.
And this out of the blue stranger tweeted back to me and she said, I just did this for a company. I looked up on their staff directory and found out, found 3 of them that were program developers in the company, found them on Twitter. Right. And I just said, hey, I'm looking at this role. Can you tell me since we're both in the same category, we both do the same thing, just tell me a little bit about what it's like. Is it really what they say it is? And she was very great. She was very helpful, or very much helped, because all 3 of them came back and said that we have all worked in a place where it's not that great, but this is not that place. This is a good place. We really love it here, et cetera, et cetera. So Twitter, depending on what you've cultivated so far in terms of your social, reach out to people. I would say, Bob, I think you'll agree, most people would be willing to help if you ask them.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I think they gain great pleasure from helping you, especially if you succeed. But yeah, so talking about the not so sexy job search, I think networking is one of those really nitty gritty type activities or methods you need to use in order to succeed in the job search. So I do have another question, and it is, how do you avoid salary expectation, especially when the question is on the company application? I feel my salary needs may be preventing me from consideration. That's a good question. Do you want to field that now or later?
Yeah. Okay. So again, this is about alignment, right? So if you think you're asking too much, or you're not asking enough, then there's a misalignment between what you think you're worth and what they think you're worth. So again, this comes down to labor market research. There's all kinds of Glassdoor. You can probably get some salary information on LinkedIn. The U.S. Labor Board, they throw out statistics regularly, and there's a lot of here in Canada. But think of your Randstads or your any employment agency. The data is there. You might not have an exact number, but you could probably get a decent range, and so that you would approach your job search knowing, okay, for someone in my role, it might be, and I'm just going to throw out a number because I have no idea, but like it might be 50 to 60,000. So as long as I have that in my mind, I think that's fair. I've done my research. I'm not overvalued. I'm not undervalued, and I can talk intelligently to an employer, knowing I've done my homework. Versus, I have no idea. Someone's asking me, and I'm afraid, and so I'll say a low number. And then you get into your salary negotiation and you've priced yourself too low. Right. And that's just, it's a horrible feeling.
Yeah. And someone writes, bravo to Maureen for mentioning it's time to move on when there's value misalignment. I like that. I would like to add that sometimes the values of an organization may change with time, e.g. when its CEO changes. Yes. Have you heard that, Maureen? Have you heard, you know, of manager changes and then like everything goes to hell for people working there?
Yeah, I just posted about this, not the other day, because I've got three or four, I'm not sure, clients who I'm working with right now. I think of this one general manager. So she was the second in command with the president of the company. The VC company came in, bought him out. He made all kinds of money. So she's left, and now she's ultimately responsible. And the VC company wants to cut all the great, amazing people who built that company, and they're focused solely on the bottom line. So she's, you know, her expectation is, I'm focused on the people, and you're not doing the thing that I signed up for. So yes, absolutely, that can happen, and it's unfortunate. But I think too, you have to be aware that, you know, when that comes in, this is a good, if that's happening in your organization, that's a good time for you to think, okay, I need to start getting my house in order because a job search is probably coming.
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but let's go on to the next question. And everyone, thank you for the questions and comments so far. They've been very, very good. So the next question is, what about ageism?
Another tough one.
Yeah.
So I think first and foremost, number one, let's call it out. It's happening.
Yeah.
There's no way it's not happening. It's an unfortunate set of circumstances. If you find yourself in those circumstances, there's a couple of different things that you can do. But I often say, first and foremost, know what your rights are. So I'll send you a link, Bob, and maybe you can share it with the group after. But basically, go to your national organization, maybe they have it at the state level as well, and find out what happens if I'm experiencing ageism. Just so you know, just so you can prepare yourself. There's nothing worse than, you know, you get into an interview setting and they ask you a question and you feel a little uncomfortable. Like, are you going to address it? Are you going to challenge it? Or are you just going to sit back and go, okay, yeah, this organization isn't for me? So first and foremost, know that it's happening. Secondly, prepare for it. So if you're concerned that maybe people are making an assumption about you based on your age, anticipate that and give them the answer to that question. So often I'll hear, I'm overqualified and I'm applying to a more junior role, but like that's the role I want.
Yeah.
I'm afraid they're going to say, you know, you're overqualified. No. Okay, so let's have that conversation. Somewhere in your correspondence, make it very clear that you're taking a step back and this is the role that you're looking for and you'd be really good at it.
Maybe in the cover letter, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So don't, you know, if there's assumptions that you're afraid of or whatever you're afraid of, bring it up and address it so that there's no ambiguity in the language and in the conversations. Don't wait for them to say, you know, to say something, like address it. And this is the thing I'll say about ageism as well is, you know, I wrote this post where I was like, if you're experiencing ageism on the old side, here are some things to do. And it wasn't 20 minutes later, I got some young person who said, well, it happens on the other end. And I'm like, you're absolutely right that it does. But Bob, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, where, you know, I got a young person coming in, they're like, what do I do? I don't have any experience. I got an older person coming in, they're like, my experience is really old and really dated. Like, what do I do? And the thing is, you can't focus on the other person. You can only sell what you have to offer. So focus on that. And I'll list off a few things, but maybe I'll take a breath. And Bob, you probably have got some things to add there.
Well, I was gonna say that, yeah, the younger person happened to be my daughter who graduated in 2020, and you know, she doesn't have the experience. where she can get a real job. But I tell her, I say, look, any experience is good experience as long as it's not illegal. So it's all a learning experience, and it's a good time to figure out what you want to do. But my customer base is primarily 50 and above.
Yeah.
I have very few younger people, in here. By the way, I would like a raise of hands of how many of you are younger than 30. Raise your hand. This gives me a time to think about what I want to say. Okay,
Yeah.
good, Matthew. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And one of my, and Julia, hold on. Is it Julio? Yeah, all right, Julio, excellent. Okay, so I also wanted to say that one of my valued customers says that age is a matter of mind. It's a state of mind. Would you agree with that?
Like, I think it is, yeah, but that doesn't mean this discrimination won't happen.
Right.
Like, I don't know if you can see that on screen, but like, there's people who make assumptions about me based on that.
On your hair, yeah,
how,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so, here's what I'll say. If you're of this age group, you're going to want to focus on the experience and the wisdom that you bring to whatever job. You can anticipate in a way that a younger, less experienced person could not. You may be more costly. That's the assumption that employers will make. So prove or validate why you're worth every penny, and do not be shy about that.
Right.
Right? You know what goes on in that industry. You know the key players. You know the ins and the outs. You've seen what works and what hasn't. Take advantage of your knowledge and your expertise and promote yourself. Now, as soon as I say that, I want to go back to your under 30s and say, and for those that are under 30, you have a fresh, clean slate. You haven't made some of the similar mistakes. You have maybe a more recent and fresh look or approach. Like, again, there are so many ways that we could have this conversation. It's really hard to get everybody all at the same time. And that's why it's so important that you each, if you have a chance to talk and work with a career professional, obviously I'm biased, but I think you should do it.
Well, so do you have a customer and a client in mind of yours that has overcome ageism, successfully, and how he or she did it? Does anyone come to mind?
No, I did have this one woman. She was a francophone, a French-speaking woman, and she basically approached an organization. And she was a non-C-suite executive. She had some very impressive experience, but she basically called it out and said, look, if you want to run an innovative organization, not only do you need to have someone who is French speaking in here, but you need a woman, and you need it. And she was really like it. I don't want to give you the impression that that's going to work for everybody, but for her personality, it worked and she got the job. And so now she's the CEO of that organization. But I would say, like I said, it doesn't work for everybody, but based on your personality, find out how to present your, whatever it is, as a strength. Whatever you think is the thing that, might not be that's concerning.
Right.
Turn it into your strength, your unique selling proposition.
That seems like a bold move, but in some cases you really need to take these bold moves in the job search.
Yeah.
So, I mean, speaking of age, there's this one guy who, let me see if I can find him. Okay, this one guy right here. So this is one of the posts that you wrote.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of him anymore, but anyone out there who's still a fan of Tom Brady?
I didn't know it was controversial. Okay, that's new information for me.
Oh, gosh. Okay, one person is still a fan. 2, 3.
That's what I get for being up in Canada.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, more. Okay, so yeah. So this is a post, a very good post that Maureen wrote in terms of value and how you present value in every aspect of your job search. And I find that, and for those of you who remember the imposter syndrome webinar guest speaker we had, I find that it tends to be true with a lot of people where they just don't understand their value. I mean, getting to that though, as mature workers, as older job seekers, you know, we do have a lot of value that we can add to organizations. So like Maureen says, you need to really think about what you're offering in terms of benefits to the employer and then present them as such. So that is a very tough topic though, but one that a lot of my customers are dealing with. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll say, Bob, in fairness, like that doesn't come naturally. Like even for me, I hire a resume writer. I hire someone to do my bio for me because I can't see myself from an outsider's perspective. So I need that help. I need someone to ask me questions, much like our conversation today, right? So I don't think you know, it's not a natural skill. Some people have it naturally, but yeah, it's not as easy as we make it sound sometimes.
Yeah, and I thought of this article, this post, by the way, because Tom Brady is kind of an older player in terms of you know, his age. So yeah. All right. Okay. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people in the job search, and how to fix them? That's a tough one.
Yeah, I would say mistake number one is thinking you can do it without help.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we don't want to talk about it, or especially if it's after a job loss, like we think we should be able to take care of ourselves and that we shouldn't need the help. Maybe we're embarrassed, or there's all kinds of emotions that we might be feeling simultaneously while we're trying to look for work. And so yeah, here's what I would say if it were me. If I were to lose my job today, is I would immediately take a minute and just feel the feelings, whatever they are. It could be hurt, it could be anger, it could be joy, who knows, right? And so
by a minute, what do you mean by a minute? How long should one take in order to get over or try to deal with these feelings?
Well, this is it. I can't say because everybody's different. Like it could be a couple of hours for me. It could be a couple of weeks. Like it really depends. And the thing is, you have to take a look at your runway. And what I mean by runway, I mean, you have to assess your financial situation first and foremost, your mental well-being, your health, your emotions. There's a couple of different things that you want to assess, you know, but first you have to feel the feelings. So step one is feel the feelings. And give yourself, you know, space to do that, but also simultaneously identify how much of a runway do you have. Like if I got a big severance for like 7 or 8 months, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to feel a few feelings for a little while and make sure I've worked through my anger, because the last thing I want to do is drag that into my job search. Like I have to be a super sexy sort of career professional in order to be attractive to potential employers. And so if I'm angry or I'm frustrated or I'm toxic, that's going to show up in the interview and people are not going to, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I
just want to make sure.
Know what you mean. Exactly. I mean, and people think, you know, when I talk with them and they're very angry, I say, look, you need to sort of dial it down because how you're talking now might seep into the interview.
Yes.
You know, so yeah. So, okay. So you're talking about how people need to take time to get over that anger. One person wrote that her minute was 6 months.
Yeah.
A little long, but I mean, we cannot judge, right? There may have been a reason why it took so long or is taking long.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say there is like, if you can get help and move things along, like there's no shame in that, right? Like reach out to professionals. You go to the dentist when you have a toothache. If you're struggling to get through this issue, go and talk to someone. Like it's an investment in your what is for most of us the only revenue driving income into our houses, into our homes, right? Like for most of us, our job is the only way that money is coming in. So if we don't, you know, take good care of ourselves mentally, emotionally, in terms of our career development, that's going to have an impact on our bottom line. And so yeah, I think it's worth getting the help that you need in order to process that. And again, it's so that you're much more prepared to go into job search feeling strong and more like yourself.
Okay, so number one, reach out for help, right? Don't go it
Yes.
alone. Number two, make sure that you are mentally set in order to conduct your job search. But what if it takes a little while? I mean, do we need to fake it till we make it, or do we need to wait until we're totally fine, you know?
Yeah, you know what? It's going to be different for different people. If if you can fake it till you make it, great. It's like grief, right? Like
Mhm.
it shows up and you think you're fine, and then all of a sudden out of the blue, boom, it hits you again, and you're like,
Exactly.
oh, I
Exactly.
thought I was dealt, through the worst of it. But don't beat yourself up. We're humans. We're doing the very best that we can. You gotta give yourself some credit for just trying to move forward at a pace that you can manage.
Sure.
But also keeping an eye on that financial. This is why it's not sexy to talk about this. Is there's
Hmm.
just so many different things happening all at once. You know,
Right.
it's
Right.
so easy to point to the resume or the LinkedIn profile or do this or do that, but there's emotions that are happening behind the scenes, and we got to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about the people who think they don't need help? And I'm thinking back to the poll where people saying that they feel sexy as hell. Are they saying to us they don't need help? What about those people?
I would say there's going to be people who think who can do it on their own, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep, good, go for it. There's going to be people who think they can do it and then they can't, and that's fine. You got to try, right? Then come
That
back.
that was me when I was out of work at the beginning. It was
Yeah,
like a weight was lifted off my chest, and yeah, okay, I'm out of that dump. Now I'm gonna get my next job.
yeah.
Didn't
And
happen
then
for a while though.
yeah, exactly. And you know what?
Yeah.
So again, everybody's, got their own life situation. You're going to make your
Mhm.
choices based on your own life and your own situation. But I guess the big take home message here is don't wait to the last minute where you're out of resources. So you've blown through all your money. You're panicked. You have to take the very first thing that shows up because now you're desperate and you're at an all-time low. Like your self-esteem is in the toilet.
Right,
Like
right.
don't that's and Bob, I think we've got to be frank here. We see that happen. We
Mhm.
see people who come in, no, I can do it all by myself. I don't need any help. And then they burn themselves out. And 9 months later, they're back to us and they're unwell. Right. And so,
Yeah.
what I hope you all take from this is now is a time to act, not in a panic, just
Mhm.
recognize that, you can take small steps towards what you want to achieve now.
So someone wrote that they voted sexy as hell because they are receiving the help that they need. That's
Awesome.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And going forward, hopefully it will lead to getting their next job, which I know it will. I know it will.
Yeah.
So what this person is saying is that, yeah, reach out for help. If not from people like Maureen and our career center, maybe from people in HR or recruiters that or the smartest person so help can come in many different forms. And so, okay, so another reason why we mentioned we talked about is they don't tell anyone they're
Mm,
out of work. Yeah,
yeah.
you sort of touched on that earlier, but who should they tell?
Oh, yeah. So first of all, why are they not telling, right? So that's
Mhm.
shame or
Yeah,
fear
oh
or
yeah,
there's
I get it.
some judgment. And so recognize that. Yeah, it's scary. Let's
Yeah.
just call it out. It feels scary.
Hmm.
So whoever you trust most,
Yeah.
that can be a spouse, a friend, a neighbor, someone in your family. Maybe it's a complete stranger. Maybe it is a therapist or a counselor of some sort. Maybe it's a career professional. The thing is to just slowly find the courage within yourself to discuss it with someone, because going it alone is, based on my experience talking with other people, is going it alone can be really tough and can go to some dark places.
Yes.
So find someone that you can trust and have that conversation.
And what about people who are unwilling to ask for help?
That's a hard one. I don't, you know, like, I cannot stress enough the importance of trying to do this. Well, first of all, it's hard to do it on your own, which we've just talked about.
Yeah.
But you're just making it harder for yourself in the long run. You can do it on your own, and some people are going to be very successful, and that's great. But then look for those free resources that we talked about a little bit earlier. Follow somebody's, you know, like a career professional like you or I, or somebody's blog or post. Read a book. There's a great Do-Over by John Acuff is a great book that you can pick up and maybe flip through. Like, yeah, I guess the big thing is don't suffer in silence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a customer years ago who, when we started talking about her inability to ask for help, she admitted that she just didn't know how. She didn't know how to ask for help. I mean, do you need to go up to someone and say, do you know of any jobs for me? No. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because that puts them, you know, that puts them in a corner, and because they might not know of any jobs for that person. So how should we ask for help?
Yeah, I think that's an easier thing to come up with is presuming you've done the work and you know what you're looking for. I can go to you and I can say, hey, Bob, I'm looking to be introduced to someone who's like the CEO of ABC company. And I just checked you both out on LinkedIn and you're connected. Hey, if it's not too much to ask, would you mind facilitating an introduction? That's something you can action. If I say to you, Bob, can you help me find a job? You can't action that for me.
Right. Exactly.
Where do you start, right? It's too vague, it's too generic. So
I guess you need to understand what a person is able to do for you before you ask for help, correct?
I think I might invert that first and say, I think first you have to ask yourself, what help do I need?
Sure, absolutely.
And then reach out. Yeah.
That is a great point, and I hope that people out there have heard this and are writing down a list of, you know, what they need help doing. What are some of the, you know, some of the help that they need. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the first questions that I ask when I meet with someone is, tell me a little bit about your situation, and I'll see where I can help out. You know, like I like that idea of you tell me what's going on. I'm not going to tell you what the fix is. You tell me what's going on and I'll listen. And then maybe together we can come up with, okay, where do you feel like you need the most help?
So it's more of a team effort, you know, for your business, for us, it should be more of a team effort. There should be some brainstorming, you know?
Yeah. Because nobody has all the answers, right?
Oh, no.
Like a little bit of it comes from you, a little bit of it comes from me, and then, you know, the best solution prevails.
All right. Okay. How are the people you're working with securing jobs?
Yeah, so they are, which is great news for everybody. I think the market's in really great shape right now, although I suspect in the not too distant future, we'll start to see things turn around a little bit. Number one, clarity. Where are you going? What do you need? What is it that you're looking for? Give me as much clarity as you can. And if you don't know how to get it, then talk to somebody like you or I. Number two, leverage your network. I mean, people want to help you. Think about it. If you could help somebody in your network, if they asked, I'm sure that you would. So reach out to your network. Also, like, don't be afraid to have conversations with different people inside the company, which we talked about. I call it labor market information or labor market research. Find out what's going on out there and see how you can take advantage of some of those opportunities as they're presenting themselves. But ultimately, it comes down to, are you able to articulate, based on your research of yourself and the companies, are you able to articulate the value that you bring to an organization? If yes, you'll probably get yourself into an interview situation. If no, maybe you will, maybe you won't.
Now, let me ask you this. Are your clients, are they creating a target company list?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, they are. And I have them pitch to companies where there's no jobs posted yet.
And how does that work?
Well, it doesn't always work. First and foremost, it doesn't always work, right?
What is the ROI on that?
Oh, I don't have a date. I don't have a statistic. If you,
it could be as low as what, 3%, right? But if it works, that's all
it
it
only
takes.
has to happen one time for me to have a story about it, right? And so I do have stories about it.
Yes.
Because sometimes those job openings, they don't get posted. And so, you know, there's all this backdoor politicking that happens, and it's all, you know, do you know so and so? Oh, I'm looking for this. Oh, this person would be perfect. Oh, you should really talk to Steve, you know, and then a friend reaches. So that definitely happens. So if you can put yourself in front of the opportunity beforehand and be like, oh, Steve put me on to this. He said I might be a good fit. And he says you guys might be looking for, you know, blah, blah, blah. Then that's great. That's it's certainly a great opportunity for you to pursue. But yeah, you can't know every job that's open when it's open. So definitely have a list of your top choices.
Right. And so let's just get back to clarity, because I think this is really important. I just want people to raise their hand if they lack some clarity in terms of what they want to do next. I won't name you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Wow. So almost, that's like 50, no, not 50%. That's like 25%, you know?
Yeah.
And that is a big hurdle to to really get over. Yeah.
You want a tip? You want a
I
suggestion?
think, what's that?
You want a tip or a suggestion?
Well, you know, you mentioned labor market information, and I imagine you're going to say, okay, what about some informational meetings or networking meetings? What else you got?
Yeah. If you aren't sure what you want to do next, take a look at the jobs you've held in the past. Itemize them, all of them. Write out all the things that you loved about previous jobs, the people you worked with. Maybe they had a coffee station that the coffee was really good. It could be silly things, like things that might not seem like a big deal, but for whatever reason, they were important to you. Identify all of those things with as much detail as you can possibly come up with.
Yep.
Then, just for 20 seconds, come up with a list of all the things that you just disliked the most. Like, oh, my boss was a micromanager and it drove me crazy. People too political and whatever. Take those negative things and then flip them or reframe them. So instead of a micromanager boss, I want to work somewhere where I have autonomy.
Sure.
Okay. Take the, you know, what's it? Oh, toxic people. I want to work somewhere where my work is valued for the contribution that I offer. And what you've done is you've started to create this, what I call the dream job, a list of all the things that are important to you. It might not give you a roadmap to exactly where you're going, but it'll give you a lot of data points to help you figure out, okay, I want to have more of those types of things in whatever I do next.
And I guess you're also getting back to values. In other words, what are the values you're looking for in your next job? Someone writes that labor market information is hard to obtain if your job is specialized. And,
yeah, that's a fair point.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, labor market information doesn't only come from the internet, from websites. It also can be obtained through discussion. And so I guess you have to be willing to have discussions with people. Networking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, networking. Yeah, absolutely. Like, read all of your journals and publications that come out in that particular industry. Know the people in that industry. Yes, I recognize that you might not, especially if you're looking for work and it's a very small niche industry, that you might not want to set off alarm bells. Go talk to people in another country doing the same thing, or go talk like in an English speaking country, if you speak English, obviously, but like go and explore different areas where you can get the data that you're looking for, just to sort of feel like part of that community again. And maybe you become the thought leader who's posting about it on social all the time, and then people are drawn to you. I mean, again, I don't know your specific example, but those are just off the top of my head.
And what about a side hustle? What about, you know, getting some kind of you know, gig job on the side until you get your dream job? Would you suggest that to job seekers?
Yeah, that's how I started my company. I was an employment counselor in the nonprofit sector, and I started doing my friends' resumes on the side until inevitably I was like, I really like this, and so I'm going to keep doing it. And so now I get to do a little bit of both.
Excellent, good. You should add public speaking to your.
No, this is the first time I have publicly spoken in quite some time, so I hope this is going okay.
It is. It's going great. And you also, sometimes you have to remind me of when we spoke together on LinkedIn.
Yes, I will.
Yeah. Okay. So next question. What are the first things people should do after they've been laid off?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little already. So number one, take a deep breath and know that you are going to be okay. It might not happen on your timeline, but you are not retired. You will work again. You just have to get yourself settled and grounded before you do anything. Next, assess your situation. What are the career skills that you have? Right? Yep. Do you know how to write your own resume? No, go get some help. Do you know how to write your own LinkedIn profile? No, go look it up online. Go to your public library. Go to your career center. Figure out what your financials look like. Talk to your financial advisor if you have one. Sometimes that could be your spouse or your kid. It depends. But basically, do a quick audit or assessment. See what you're working with.
Right.
See what you've got at the helm, and even with your supports, like, okay, I'll talk to my neighbor about how this is really hard for me, and I'll talk to my parent about how I might need a little extra cash, or I'll talk to the government about I might need a little extra cash. But figure out what your game plan is first and foremost before you do any, like, do not react. Do not go and throw 300 generic resumes onto a job board and cross your fingers and hope it'll all work out.
Right.
Be strategic. Put together a plan. You don't go into business without a plan. Don't go into your job search without a plan either.
Well, I think you and I talked about this just before this meeting, and we said that in some cases, my customers have been out of work for a number of months. Would it be wise to think of the job search now as a blank slate and everything that you've suggested just do or do again? I mean, that's the problem I find, is that a lot of people get into the numbers game where they think, oh, I've been out of work for 5 months. John's been out of work for 3 months. What's wrong with me? So I think that's something that people just need to shuck off, is that stigma of being out of work for too long.
It's not you. It's really not. I know that your first instinct is, I did something wrong. They must not like me. You make it about you. But here's the thing. You're not finding the right opportunities for you. There's one of two things. You're not finding the right match, or you need to strengthen your job search muscle, because what you're doing, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your interviewing, all of the tactical pieces, something in there isn't working. We don't know what it is yet. We have to figure that out. But it is not you, right? Like, I cannot stress that enough. Don't make it about you. Every piece of feedback that you get, even if that's no feedback whatsoever, is data for you to go, okay, how can I improve that next time? If I send out 40 resumes and I get no responses, that tells me something's wrong with my resume, or something's wrong with where I'm sending them. That doesn't say there's something wrong with me. That's not true. I have skills. I'm valued in the market. I just have to present it in such a way that people understand the value that I have to offer. So the data point is, I'm not doing the job I need to do in order to make it easy for people to choose me. So I need to do better at that.
But I mean, to be fair though, it is in some cases the person's fault. In other words, they were let go because of either lack of performance, personality conflict, whichever it may be. At that point, I think it is time to say, okay, this is time for me to make a fresh start. Didn't work at my last place, but I've got to think of that as the past. I mean, easier said than done.
Great. Yeah, but also misalignment, right? Like, so, okay, I need to do better when I look for different types of employers. That one didn't work for me. So what was it about that didn't work? how do I find something more aligned to what does or will work for me?
Exactly.
Right? It's like that you take the negative and you reframe it into a positive. I got fired because I didn't show up for a shift, right? Okay.
Wait, are you talking about yourself, or are you?
No. I'm saying it as an example. But like, so then maybe I need to look for remote work or flexible work because I don't want to work traditional 9 to 5s. Like, just figure out what it is and then look for that type of work. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but we're just trying to give some examples.
Yeah. So one person asked, so what is statistic length of time to find? I guess what the person is asking, what is the average amount of time it takes to find work? I think that varies in terms of your occupation, your level of employment, and so forth.
Yeah, it really does. I'll often joke, like, it depends. If you're looking to work at Blockbuster Video, you're going to be waiting a long time, right? So it really depends on the industry, and it depends on what your job search skills are. There's no like hard and fast rule, but basically take a look and say, what's going on in the market and what am I seeing so far? Like, how quickly are people with similar skill sets getting picked up? When I first started out, we used to tell executives it's 18 months before, the average job search takes 18 months because there's all the vetting and, all the different rounds of interviewing that people have to go through. I mean, right now, I can't say about what's going on in your area.
You're talking with executive level job seekers.
Yeah.
18 months, okay, over a year and a half, okay. But for those who are mid-level to entry level, not so long.
Again, it depends. Like here, so when I'm in Ottawa, a lot of clients come from the government of Canada, and their hiring process can be up to 12 months. Like it's.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's horrendously long, thorough, but horrendously long. Whereas in the private sector, I mean, they could pick somebody up in 3 weeks and they could have an offer, by the 4th week, and then 5 weeks in and they're working. So yeah, it really depends.
And that also, I mean, I know we have one question left, but that is also a question I often get is, why is it taking so long for the company to make a decision? Or how come I haven't heard from the company in, say, 3 months? Well, the inner workings of companies in terms of the hiring process are different. A company may like you, may want to bring you on, but there are some procedures that they need to go through, or maybe someone's on vacation for the next week, and that happens to be a decision maker. I don't know, how do we know? I mean, other than trying to get a hold of the company or the recruiter and so forth.
Yeah, and you can't know, but what we tend to do is, again, oh, they didn't like me, oh, there's something wrong with me. No, it could just be that, like you said, we couldn't get everyone's schedules together, and so it's taken us 6 months. Meanwhile, the candidates often offered another job and accepted it by the time that they get their house in order. So yeah,
they're lost then.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. What goes into a solid job search plan strategy? I think really we've covered a lot of this, but is there anything else you can think of in terms of the job search plan or strategy?
Yeah, I'm going to sum it up really quickly. And I'll go back to the godfather of career development, Frank Parsons. He says, know yourself, know what you want, what your interests are, what it is that you're looking for. Know yourself. Number 2, know the market, understand, what's in demand right now. And then number 3, pair the two. Pair your offering, what you have to offer the market, with what the needs of the market are, and there you go. Yeah. I mean, we could get into it about.
We got the resume, LinkedIn profile, networking, and all those, strategy, all those methods to use in the job search.
It's all in there. If you don't know what you want, it's going to be hard to find it. If you don't know what's in demand, it's going to be hard to find it. So it's so important, like all of the tactical pieces, the resume, the LinkedIn profile, the networking, cover letter, like all the conversations, the interview.
Yeah.
None of that comes before knowing what you want, knowing what the market needs, and positioning yourself to do exactly that.
Right. And in knowing what you want is a big part of the battle. It's just
Yeah, because the other thing, Bob, is you can't want everything. As soon as you want everything, you're focused on nothing.
Mhm.
right? So every
Oh,
time,
you're talking about someone who'll say, "Oh, I'll take anything. I'll do anything," right?
yeah, yeah. Because
Oh.
every time you take your eye off the ball and
Mhm.
you focus on jobs that aren't a good fit for you, that's an opportunity cost. You now are missing out on an opportunity to align yourself with a job that is a good fit. And so I don't want to say you're wasting time, but it's not optimal. It's not the best use of your time. Focus
Mm.
on what you want. The more you can weed out, the more time you're focused on the ones that are going to be a good fit, and you're going to do a much better job of your job search if you can do that.
But it's going to take some work, you know?
It definitely is going to take some work. The not so sexy part of job search.
The not so sexy part of the job search, and how much time should it take for someone to identify their skills, their accomplishments, you know, the things they liked about their past jobs, the things they didn't like about their past jobs, the values that they're looking for in their next jobs. How long should they take in order to do this? Should it be a day, 2 days, or a week?
It depends on how much they've been doing it all throughout their career. And so what I'll often say, because I work with a lot of military folks, is
Mhm.
if you haven't had to look for work in 20 years, you should not try and figure out what you're going to be in your next career in 3.5 days. Like you need on
Yeah,
average
yeah.
a full, at least, and I'm being very quick, at least a full day, at least a full day for every year you haven't looked for work, because there's skills that you need to develop and things you don't know about yourself that you need
Yeah.
to figure out.
And of course, people want the numbers. They want to be able to quantify the number of days it will take in order for them to complete their strategy, you know, their plan. But
Yeah.
that's not always possible, you know?
Well, that's like saying, how many days did it take you to figure out to fall in love with your spouse?
Yeah.
Like what worked for you might not work for me. Like my mother-in-law and father-in-law, it was 3 days.
Yeah.
3 days. My husband, it was 5 years. Like I don't know what's the answer. It's different for different people, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Maureen, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, and
Awesome.
thank you everybody for your
Huh?
questions. And I was just
Yeah.
saying thanks for the people that participated. And this was,
Mhm.
I hope you got some value out of it for today.
I think so. I definitely think so. But you know, as I tell my guest speakers, I don't pay very much. It's $0, but I can offer you parking. So
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
That's
great
great.
to you know, see you again, and I hope to see you in the future. Hopefully, maybe in person. But yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
my
so much.
pleasure. This has been a real joy for me. It was nice to talk with you. And like
Hmm.
I said, I hope the folks here found this to be a valuable use of their time. And
I
hopefully
think,
we'll get to do this
yeah.
again before long.
But one last question:
Go for it.
who's going to win, the Celtics or who are they playing? I
I don't
forget.
know. Who are you cheering
Yeah,
for? Because
who are
that's
we
who I'm
playing?
going to pick.
Huh?
I think it's going to be the Celtics.
The Heat. The Heat. Thank you, Fred. Man, you are sharp. Okay, so who's going to win, the Celtics or the Heat?
I think it's going to be
Fight
the Celtics.
tonight. Okay, thank you. You're still good by me. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
All right. Bye bye.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.